This episode is sponsored by FrontrunnerNewJersey.com, your digital publication that covers South Jersey, and Fruition Life Media, preserving family legacies through video tributes, and Creative Content on Demand, your multimedia marketing company for all businesses.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, April?
Good. So we have Chris today, Chris
Thanks for
Rivera
joining.
from the Filipino American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Philadelphia. And so we want to just dive in and learn a little bit about the chamber and how it can support our business owners. So can you just share a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to be part of this organization?
Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity. And hi, James. Um, so as far as my journey, it really, and how specifically, things in my journey led to where I am with the chamber, goes back to time in high school where my parents really wanted for me to experience things that make me Filipino. Them as immigrants, they wanted to be able to bring more of their home here to my home. I was born here, so one of my first forays into community service really was with Philippine folk dancing. So that did that for several years, college, post grad, and then after college, my parents, they knew that there's more to it, but that was really where it started. But it was my exploration that led me beyond that. Eventually with the chamber when it first started in 2013, and it just seeing more Filipino businesses popping up and seeing where there's opportunity, but not knowing where that is, it was really interesting to be part of that journey. So a lot of stuff in between, but certainly started where a lot of Filipino kids start with the folk dancing, but over the years it just kind of just organically led me to the chamber.
Talk about some of the things that you guys have made possible for business owners, Filipino business owners to, uh, thrive in the greater Philadelphia area.
Sure, absolutely.
And
Uh,
also, is that the only area you cover? You cover South Jersey as well, or?
we do, yeah. So when we say Greater Philadelphia, generally, it's we have member businesses in Delaware as well, and in South Jersey. So anywhere, I guess 50 square miles, I guess, roughly. Um, so, what ways that we support our business member businesses. It took some time to really figure this out. When we first started, it was, how do we connect with businesses in the Philippines? Because there were only just a handful of Filipino businesses. So it really took some time to continue to have conversations with these owners, but also on the flip side, what are consumers looking for so that we can help these businesses or prospective business owners cater their business to the needs of the community. And as more businesses grew or more people had interest in the Filipino business community, we had a better grasp as far as, what we could offer, how we can help. So as far as programming, things that we do, we identified certain areas where our opportunities where business owners or prospective business owners have a challenge and really couldn't find people to help or resources to help. So we identify subject matter experts to help walk them through some of these processes or provide these resources. So, for example, wealth management. So, as when you're thinking about running a business, you have to, you can't forget that, that's just a part of your life, that there's other aspects of your life to consider when you're starting or considering a business. So, this person walks us through, don't forget this, X, Y, and Z. We've also had a representative from the Philadelphia Department of Commerce who helped us walk through what the city offers for small business owners, or whether you are just thinking about starting a business, or if you've already opened and now you're getting having these growing pains. What can the city provide to help you through these? So these are just some of the topics that we've covered in some of our programming. And as well, we just provide spaces for these same folks to just be in the same room together. A lot of times, the best help are people that have already been through that process, and that was something that we've missed over the years. Is sometimes people just want to meet other business owners and just talk and how are they successful, or how did this person fail and overcome that failure. So that's been actually more recently been, some of our better attended and events that have garnered the best feedback from the attendees.
So what type of signature events or new events that you have started, to bring the business owners together?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do bi-monthly events, and it's a mixture of business workshops. So it's, as I mentioned, from wealth management and city resources, but we'll also mix in just purely networking mixers where folks come in, have some light refreshments and really just talk amongst themselves. Sometimes we'll have icebreakers, some activities to encourage them to share updates or your needs. For example, the last one we put this timeline up on the wall, and we had folks kind of just post where they are in their business journey. And then folks, after they put that, others will kind of come in and say, here's where I can help along your journey. And then, share projects that are coming up as well. So little activities there, but again, just providing that space for folks to really talk and share, experiences and share their insights and expertise and however they can help each other along their own journeys.
Now,
You know,
oh,
I'm sorry. I just want to say because
that's a good
when you're
one.
talking about the networking, a lot of people who are starting out entrepreneur or in the midst of running a business find themselves, stressed out, and it becomes a lonely journey. But
Mhm.
talk about that importance and the growth that you might have heard from testimonials from members of your chamber, in terms of why it's so important to network
Yeah.
and be in the village, for
Yeah.
lack of a better word, I
Right.
guess.
Well,
And it really does take a village. It's, because I'll say this last thing, running a business is almost like managing a family.
mhm,
And so, and as they say, it takes a village to, raise a family.
yeah.
Well, it does take a village to, help that business owner. So
It does. It does. So what we found, and this is interesting, is that each time we have this we call it an entrepreneurship mixer, there's always new faces every single time. There's some familiar faces, but what's nice is that there's always new people that see from afar, that we have this event, and probably along the way have interacted with somebody that's either been to one or have interacted with somebody that's been there, and even that word of mouth is really driving it. But when they come, and the first thing I say is, I didn't even know that there were this many Filipinos that are in business or own businesses. That's the first thought always, and I think that I'm not going to say shock, but that surprise, and that there's others that are either going through or have gone through the process is that the first thought, and always it's that excitement that follows that, hey, I'm going to get something out of this, that experience. So that's a huge part of it. And then as I usually I'll kind of just walk around the room, just listen, and then in these conversations I can always hear the excitement in their, in just whatever they're talking about, whatever it is. It's always business related. It's not like they go off on tangents. They literally the whole time they're always talking about either their own business or somebody else's journey that they're there for or on behalf of, and that's
Right.
what excites me, is that just putting them all in a room is that folks are getting value, and I'm hoping that folks will continue to participate, because you know just because you took have a takeaway from one doesn't mean that you may not get something out of the next one. Somebody else, as I said, there's always a new face. So you come
Yeah.
back and there's a new face, maybe there's new insight. So it excites me when they're excited about just being in a room with other business people.
And how do you stay connected with people who are first timers or how do you stay connected to those people who are coming to the events?
Yeah.
and those who
So
may be introverts as well,
Right, right,
how do you get them involved? Because we
yeah,
see them sometimes.
right.
that's true. No, that's absolutely true. So staying connected with the first timers, we do require folks to just register. Just, hey, my name, business, and then contact info. So we always do follow ups. Even at the end of each mixer, we do an engagement survey just to see, kind of get into their head why they're there. But if there's anything else that they may or may not want to get from that connection that they made, not just with us, but with the other business owners. Often, usually, they'll opt into our mailing list. So, we're always keeping them apprised of what's going on. Just, and we're trying our best to utilize social media and because we know a lot of these newer businesses are really leaning on social media
Yeah.
to share their journey as well, whether it's what products or services they provide, or even in the process of opening. Folks want to stay apprised of that. So we do our best to just flood them with all the stuff that we're doing, and if something sticks and they come back, which most of the time they do. That's definitely our goal there.
So, what steps is the chamber taking to connect Filipino American businesses in Greater Philadelphia with international markets, particularly Philippine and Southeast Asia?
Sure,
I know that you're saying you're focusing locally, but what are we doing to connect overseas?
absolutely. So when we first started, as I mentioned, a big, heavy focus on finding those opportunities for businesses here to connect with businesses there, and vice versa. So those connections we've never lost. We just, we still stay in touch. Philippine Department of Commerce, Philippine Department of Trade and Industry. These are connections that we, regularly, utilize. Whether it's, if there's specific needs, or just to stay in touch. So more recently, the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry had this interest in showcasing weavings by indigenous people in the Philippines. So even in those projects of the Philippine government, we still help facilitate, helping to find venue, helping to market. So there's still ways that we remain in communication and interacting with those entities.
Right, and
Okay.
I do have one more thing to say, like, because you kinda grew up like I did, introduction to our Filipino heritage through dance, and that you said now there's more businesses that are opening up. Do you find that they're kind of like business owners like us, trying to stay connected to the Filipino community who were born here in America, or is it a mixture? Like, what have you seen? And I've seen on your social that there's a lot of restaurants, jewelry, but and insurance and stuff like that. But can you share a little bit like what the demographics look like? Because I'm just curious, because I'm born here and have a business and, and
Yeah, I think it's a mix, but I think the often the deciding factor is there really room for sharing the culture? And I say that so I mentioned it earlier that we have financial advisors. Really, there's nitty gritty. There's a lot of moving parts in that process. So really, my understanding, just there really doesn't make sense to bring culture into that. A lot of where you'll see, the Filipino culture is anything artistic, whether it's visual or even culinary. So that's where a lot of food, a lot of chefs often lean on that, and that's where they, at least here in our area, majority of the Filipino chefs that I've interacted with use their culture as a way to add flair to the cooking. You have ones that really focus on Filipino food. So, for example, Chef Chance with Tabachoy, his whole shtick is Filipino. But then you have Liz Groth, who is a Filipino chef, but she fully focuses on her Italian cooking. So even there's decisions that they've made on their own. So it's very diverse in thinking, and how do you use your culture to help people understand your work?
You're a first generation Filipino, right? Um, and those who are still migrating maybe here to the United States, and who starts a business, and those who been born here start a business, do those business look a little bit different, or do you help them navigate those who come over from the Philippines to navigate and get into the system that could be a little bit different, or is there any difference?
and
That-
support.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. As far as our experiences in, you know, whether or not those two demographics need more support, I, I I really haven't noticed any difference. But what I've also how I understand it as well is um, what we've found is folks that immigrate here to the U.S. and start businesses often heavily lean on their experiences as a Filipino versus focusing on what the American consumer wants, which is, I
Mhm.
think, why some of the businesses that have come and gone have not necessarily succeeded. Is um, they don't have enough, or they don't have enough experiences to draw from or connections that they've made to really cater to the American consumer. So they're still kind of in that Philippine mindset, which is certainly an opportunity for us as a chamber, is to, if they identify it as an opportunity, hey, you might, marketing, and even interior design. Sometimes, when we have interior designers now that are members, which is cool. But even those decisions sometimes, not that they're off-putting, but maybe folks just uh, don't have as much of an interest to return. They've maybe tried it, they maybe visited one time, but um, but when on the flip side, folks that are born here and are Filipino, they grow up as an American consumer. I think their perspective is a little bit different. Um, they they understand the consumer, but uh, they don't have a strong connection with the Filipino culture because they weren't born in the Philippines. So I think that's where, we haven't found much of a disparity between the needs of those two demographics because they have their own opportunities, and they still, from an opportunities perspective, still have relatively the same amount of a need of support.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting because it's still the I guess when you grow up, people come to America, like my parents came in like 69,
Mhm.
and they came with, hey, be a nurse and be in the medical fields. So I think we're in that generation now of like business owners,
Mm.
and taking that um I guess that American dream of and diving into entrepreneurship. And it can be challenging at first because some people are just like, well, it's like, can you really do it? How are you going to support your family? Answer all those questions. But it's no different than when they came here to America and faced that challenge. And how are you going to support? You
Mhm.
know, so I think for me, it's interesting,
Yeah.
but I think we all need to somewhat talk about it too. And I think this is a great opportunity with the chamber, that what you're doing is just even bridging that gap. So is there any other ways that you are doing to bridge that gap? If there, like, I know you kind of said there isn't, but the
I like where you're
yeah,
going with that, because it
yeah.
is interesting to know that, well, for one who comes to, this country is to, start a better life for the family and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
But then the child may say, well, thank you, but I'm thinking about entrepreneurship,
Right.
opposed of going to be a doctor, nurse, lawyer, whatever the case may be, engineer,
Right.
because that was their plan. But in America, sometimes it changes, once
Right.
you grow up in the country. And so, with that said, have you found that to be, I guess, some of the challenges of probably, seeing not as many Filipinos as you'd like to see that are in business, opposed of just career oriented?
Yeah, no, no, I agree with that. Probably being an influence in why it's not as much of a booming community. It's still growing, but not much of a booming community. Um, what I can tell you is there are several members of our chamber that um, have not necessarily started as an entrepreneur, started in a different field, and
Mhm.
eventually decided, hey, this is something I've always wanted to do. I'm going to switch to that. So I think maybe that's to your point, where folks, some of these folks were discouraged from opening their own business, being an entrepreneur. But then once they followed that path and were at a point where they could diverge, did so because they've always wanted to do it. So it may not have been their first path, but that's where they are now. And so
You've
there's
seen
several
it's
folks.
like a second, path. Like,
Yeah,
okay, we've done what you wanted us to do,
right.
but you know what? I'm gonna follow my passion. And I find that there's so many great Filipino artists. So,
Yeah,
what we're doing right now, media, that's an art, and I've seen people who are painters and said, well, my parents always said they wanted me to be a nurse or a doctor. And I just said, I just got to take the challenge because I started out in nursing and I was like, you know what? I've always loved being in front of the camera, behind the camera, and just doing visual art, of telling people stories. And first year in college, I said, "Oh, I don't think I like chemistry. I think I'm gonna stick with what I like to do, and is tell stories and just love this medium."
Parents who out there, I don't care who you are, look at your children's hobbies, invest in them because that
Mhm.
may be where their great wealth is at in that particular area. So it's important not to ignore that. Talk about you personally, how it makes you feel being able to uh, bring, um, you know, that community together like that and see them grow.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely fulfilling. It's uh, I'm not gonna say it's a thankless job because folks are obviously very, very thankful of the opportunity. But what I could say is that um, you know I've had the pleasure of providing the space, and you know, in the short time I've been running the organization, I've already had a couple quote unquote success stories of just again providing the space and things organically happen, and folks are finding success. So I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, we during our Taste of the Philippines, so our Filipino American History Month celebration, and the planning of that, it was still it was our second year at Cherry Tree Pier, totally different venue from where we had it before. So we were still kind of working out some of the opportunities with having that event there. So we're having a tough time encouraging restaurants to come out because we do love to have the Philippine food there. That's a huge thing with Philippine customers. They know there's always food. And we really were struggling to get folks out because it's just a different process. And one of our board members said, "Hey, my brother-in-law, he has a food cart. He hasn't, been able to use since before the pandemic. He just in the pandemic he had to shut down, obviously, and just never really picked it back up. But he said he's just very passionate about it. Just see if you can kind of give him a nudge. So he had the cart shut down for 3 years, talked to him. It took a few phone calls, encouraged him, pushed him, helped him through the process. So he came finally. He was one of our very few food vendors that day. Um, Lines all day because there were only a couple of them. They stayed through till 6 o'clock, and that was his first day back and has been back since. So for the last couple of years, he's been, part of the cost from Drexel University. So he's a Mommy Telly's famous barbecue, if you haven't heard it. So they're, right across the Drexel Dragon statue. His spot is right there. He's back there. He's back in business now. So again, just we have the space. We provide them this opportunity. Folks come. And we do our best to support them however we can, and hopefully, something good comes from it. And that was just one of our success stories. So, you know,
That's awesome.
That's a good
That's
story.
awesome.
Like, you
Wow.
really encouraged that.
I mean, you
Wow, that came
literally
together.
resurrected a business that was closed down for 3 years, and
Right.
then
yeah,
you know
and they're back.
opportunities like that. Wow.
And
It
and
takes a village.
And listen, I we attended not last year, but I think the year before
Yeah.
not the Taste of Philippines, but I guess it's the Taste of Philippines, the one on the
Mhm.
pier. And I got my pair of earrings on from one
Mhm.
of the
Yeah,
vendors. I cannot
nice.
remember her name, but I love earrings, so I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna wear my earrings," and it matches the set. And so, that just I guess during the pandemic for me, that's where I was even diving into more Filipino businesses online, and it caught my eye to go, "Hey, I remember attending a Taste of the Philippines, and
Mm.
look where this is going." And
Yeah.
my family, it's a biracial we're a biracial family, and I always try to take the opportunity to try to expose them to both, parts of their, of
Culture.
their
Yeah.
culture. What kind of advice would you offer to aspiring Filipino American entrepreneurs looking to start or grow their business in the Philadelphia area, New South Jersey area, Delaware?
Yeah,
What kind of advice would
yeah,
you offer?
absolutely. So I've the last year or two, and I'm aging myself as well, but a lot of the younger folks, I hate using younger folks, but younger folks that I've interacted with, that just have some sort of interest. When I tell them, just two words, say be present. When I say be present, um, you know, if there's something that you're interested in, go to where that is. Whether it's, let's say you want to start a restaurant, well, visit a restaurant, go talk to them. Or, when you have resources like the chamber, just come. Just you don't need to bring anything. You don't need to come with anything but yourself and your interests, and just listen if you want to. But I think a lot of folks, unfortunately, the introverts sometimes shy away from being present. But I think there's a lot of very easy, quick learnings from just being around folks that are in your realm that folks lose out on because they're so hyper focused on what I need to do right now to then move on to the next step. Um, but you're not the first person that has taken this journey. There are so many people out there, and they don't even need to be Filipino. But certainly, the Filipino business experience is a little bit different. So you may find more value with coming to our meetings or entrepreneurship mixers. But if you don't put yourself out there and just be around these like-minded people, you're gonna lose out on a lot of stuff, resources, experiences. And
Yeah.
I certainly encourage folks, whether you're younger or older, whatever you are, wherever you are in the journey, find ways to be present, and I think you'll gain.
Yeah.
I like that.
I
I
found
like
it
that.
to be true when the term you hear birds of a feather
Mm,
flock together. I
Mhm.
found when we connected through networking events or chambers or whatever the case may be, that we thrive better. We start thinking more strategic about our business because when you're around that, you know, it's almost like you're transforming and becoming the very thing that you actually came to go see and learn about. You're like, oh,
yeah,
I'm that now,
Right.
because you're engaging. So I think it's important to have, these type of networking, these type of
Right.
chambers. Let's give our viewers something that you can have them unlock in terms of understanding what the chamber, just a real quick summary of what the chamber can offer them in terms of growing their business.
sure. So owning a business is a process. It's a journey, and what we could do at the chamber is walk along that journey with you. And anytime you stumble, hopefully you don't fall. But if you fall, we want to be there to help you back up. Want to be there when you succeed, celebrate with you. But it is a process, and hopefully along the way, if you ever need anything, we want to be there for you.
And how, if one wants to be a member or learn more about the chambers, tell us how they may be able to get in contact with you. Their phone number, emails,
Yeah, so
website.
you can email philamchamberphila at gmail.com. Our website is philamchamber-greaterphila.com.
Do you have social
Yeah,
media? If you can share us where
yeah,
they can
we're
find you.
mostly on Instagram. We're on Facebook as well. Phil M Chamber Philly. Or you can call me anytime. I'm available. 610-513-2340.
Well, Chris, we really appreciate you joining us today and taking the time out. You're one of our first interviewees. Although, as it airs, it may look like the second or the third, but you're the first. Let
Yeah,
it be known. We'll leave that in.
yeah. I appreciate it. It's really cool. I really
Well,
appreciate
we
the
really
opportunity.
appreciate you taking this time.